and then we'll get started. But until then, please hold tight and be patient with us. Sure, I do have 2 people that have called in as well.
Okay.
All right, do you guys want to start or you want to wait another minute?
I would wait just maybe a little longer, Marcy. Maybe just maybe so people coming in.
I have an image of that lobby getting very crowded.
That's good.
Shoulder to shoulder virtually.
I see some familiar faces.
Okay, Marcy, I think we're good to go. Thank you.
All right. All right, welcome everyone. This is our 8th Project Advisory Committee meeting for the I-84 Danbury project. We thank you for giving us an hour and a half of your time today, and we hope that we'll give you, we know that we'll give you some new information, but we hope that you'll appreciate it and have a lot of questions, and we'll have a great discussion. All right, so I'm shortening, I think we're all comfortable with Teams, but I'm shortening the introductory slides. They used to be very long, and now we're trying to get them down to like 1 minute or less. So if you have any questions, you know, I encourage you to ask them in the chat, but obviously I want you to know that this meeting is live and recorded. And what we do is we post it online after that, and we use that recording to help us draft the meeting notes. We always post it online afterward, and there's 2 ways to get in. It looks like we have both on. You can call in or a video conference in, and I hope that if anyone here has had any issues with the website or getting in, please send me a direct chat or an email, and you know, we'll do our best to make it as public friendly as possible or PAC friendly as possible. We're hoping people can mute themselves. You know, we want this to be an open discussion, but you know, we all have dogs, and a lot of us are home. So, you know, when you're not speaking, just mute yourself. And then finally, you know, through regular breaks in the conversation between the presenters, I will chime in, I'll ask for questions, and, you know, we're going to do that regularly. So you feel comfortable knowing that there's going to be key points to ask those questions about specific topics. All right. We're all on Teams. I think we've used this for our online meetings. The big things are, you know, video on and off. We love your videos on, but you don't have to keep them on. It depends on your comfort level. and the mic on and off, which is the blue square there. When you're not speaking, just please turn it off so that there's not a lot of background noise. The big thing too is the participant list, which is what's in the green square here. And this is where you can see who's also chimed in. Next slide. As well as, the chat pane. This is where to really type in questions. If you don't want to speak, we'll make sure to answer them and we'll make sure it gets logged in the meeting summary. And then finally, there's one other button, and that's this little ellipsis here. And this is where you can really just have fun with your backgrounds and, torture us if you want. But yeah, we want you to know it's there. You can explore it, and Teams has some neat things in there too. All right. The big thing is, there's two ways that we want you to participate. We want you to either raise your hand, to speak, and I will, we'll always call on you. We're not looking to have anyone be silenced. That's not how this group works. And the chat, if you feel more comfortable with that. All right. 30 seconds or less. Any questions? I don't see any raised hands and I don't see anything in the chat. So I think I do want to mention a couple of things. We have some new speakers today, which is pretty cool. As many of you might have heard, Yolanda Antoniak has retired from the department, and we have Krishaline Macrahan, who is, I don't want to say taken her place, but she's taken over a prominent role in this project, and she's going to be giving a portion of the presentation today. So you'll hear from her. And I think moving forward, she's someone that we're going to work closely with. We also have Janine Gowan. You all know Sharat. I don't think he needs a big introduction. And then finally, Rick Black from SLR Consulting is also going to be there. And then Andy typically always often closes out our presentation, so we will also hear from him. And then the one other, the other person from the department that, I want to just keep on the agenda is not on the agenda, but Neil Patel. He is a big player and decision maker in this process. So, he might be answering some questions as we go through today's meeting. All right, Krishaline.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to thank everyone for coming to attend our 8th PAC meeting. Again, I'm Krishaline Macrahan. I am, like Marcy said, I not really entirely replaced, but I joined the project team, the I-84 Danbury project team last December of last year. And I've been with the department for over 5 years. So for today's agenda, we are discussing the PAC meeting up, the PAC update. We're also looking into three concepts that we are discussing. These are the concept 24, which is the Star Avenue at interchange. Well, this was brought up by the city of Danbury for us to look at. Second is the transportation system management and operation strategies, or we call TISMO. Lastly is the concept 14, which is the collector distributor road eastbound at the eastern section of the study area. We're also going to talk about the concept screening process, then next steps or our schedule of this project. And lastly, we will end this meeting with discussion and open discussions and questions. Next up. Okay, for PACT update. So since I wasn't there, since the project's the PAC last meeting last November of 2021, someone's here. We met up with the New York towns virtually in December of last year. We also have a new member, PAC member, and then we also recently published a spring newsletter. Then we also added more concepts to the website. These two, the newsletter and the new concepts are all available in our project website at www.i84danbury.com. So please visit that. Also, we have attended pop-up events in Danbury, and we continue to create social media content. So we've been actively posting to our social media content, social media in Instagram, Twitter. If you could visit us at I-84 Danbury. So here's a list of our PAC members, though, and we welcome City Weather as our newest member, as highlighted or as marked in red in here. And with that, I will pass the presentation to Janine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And it sounds like somebody's eating celery or carrots. I will just throw another reminder to mute if you're not speaking, because that'll help us with echoes and other things. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. I just wanted to start us off with a bit of a reminder of what our sort of guiding purpose is as we look at a number of new concepts today. And that is to reduce congestion and improve mobility, mobility of people and goods in the I-84 corridor in Greater Danbury. So how do we get to that purpose? Well, this was guided by the very early analysis of needs and deficiencies that was done by CDM Smith, along with a number of workshops with consultant and DOT FHWA team members, and then PAC input at one of our earlier meetings. So this is the purpose that will guide us through all of our concept analysis and beyond. And I just want to recall that congestion, as we've defined it, is characterized by slower speeds, longer delays, and queuing, something we've all experienced if we've driven on I-84 Danbury at one point or another. And then mobility is the ability of a transportation system to effectively move both people and goods from one place to another. So they're like related cousins, but they're different as well. So we can go to the next slide. So how will that purpose statement be used? Well, we're going to present a number of concepts today. We did at the November meeting as well. These are partial solutions. Some are in discrete locations in the project area. Some are associated with the main line, others with a particular segment or an interchange. They're partial sort of treatments, and each is being evaluated for its potential, first and foremost, to meet the project purpose. Does it reduce congestion, improve mobility, or does it have the potential to? If the answer is yes, the concept moves forward. If it's no, it's eliminated from further consideration. And if it partially meets or has the potential to add to those objectives, then it moves forward to the next phase of analysis. And some of this will become clearer today as we talk about not only reviewing the concepts that we're presenting today, but Rick Black later on in the presentation is going to talk about our screening analysis and how concepts move forward and how we will be evaluating them into full solutions as we move forward. You can go to the next slide. And I think you go, yeah, one more. So we're going to be looking at three concepts. We're going to start with concept 24, which I will present. And then Sharat will cover the dynamic lane use, which we also call TISMO, which I can never remember what it means, but Krishaleen just went through that. And then finally, we'll look at concept 14. And I just want to acclimate everyone. You see in small green squares, we have the exit numbers, and then we've got Route 7 coming in sort of middle screen towards the bottom, and then upper right screen. And so the three concepts that we're going to look at today pretty much occur between the two locations where Route 7 joins and is parallel with I-84. Okay, concept evaluation. Pop to the next one. So as with all of the concepts that we have and will evaluate, we look at a number of factors, including how the concept would affect traffic operations, effects to the mainline I-84, constructability. We look at environmental impacts, and we look at really very preliminary sort of order of magnitude cost estimates. So that's a constant. You've seen these before, and you will see them again. Next slide. So yeah, concept 24 we call Star Ave and interchange 5. This just gets us acclimated to where we are. And this particular concept occurs between interchanges 5 and 6. And again, this is sort of the segment of I-84 that is coincident with Route 7. And we call this the center portion of the study area. So what is concept 24? There's two main aspects. It creates a new interchange on Star Ave, and it adds what we call a collector distributor road, or a CD road. We will refer to that as we go through, between interchanges 5 and 6, which is essentially between where Main Street occurs and North Street. And on this access, North Street will have full access to I-84. We'll also have access to the businesses on North Street that will be maintained. And it will provide access to downtown area as well as with many of the opportunities, or many of the concepts rather, that we'll look at, it gives us some opportunities to enhance bicycle and pedestrian use. So this is, and Sharat will zoom in and out. This is just an overhead view with the proposed new additions shown in that light gray. Any bridges that would be expanded or replaced are shown in orange. And then, westbound, we see the existing westbound ramps at interchange 5. Sharat can maybe point those out. This shows up better in another slide later, but some of those existing ramps will be eliminated. And then the new interchange, which looks like a capital letter C, is proposed in the Star Avenue area. Now the CD road will be, you see that on the lower part, it'll be a one-way, two-lane roadway that goes eastbound, and that will be parallel to I-84. Sharat, I don't know if there's anything else you want to zoom in on. I don't have anything else specifically. You can see exit 6 in the bottom or in the top right hand, and then exit 5 just to the right of where that capital C is. You can go to the next slide. So one thing I want to point out, because we're looking at this concept sort of in isolation from the rest of any mainline improvements, it does not show, nor is it a surprise that it doesn't show an improvement of congestion on the I-84 highway proper itself. But that is not necessarily the central focus of what we're trying to look at for this concept. We want to see more of the interchange and the local sort of traffic patterns if this concept were actually implemented. So to evaluate the overall aspect of the continuity of I-84, we would have to look at this in combination with some others. But what we can see is that if this concept were implemented, it would actually increase congestion outside of the concept limits on local roads, and then on the CD road, as predicted by our traffic analysis during the afternoon peak hours. The other thing to note is that this concept would also require widening at local street intersections where they come in close proximity to the highway and to the new interchange. So this is my favorite graphic. So this first base layer just shows, you can see interchange 5, exit 5 towards the left of the figure, and partial interchange towards the right, and gives you just the lay of the land as it exists today. The next click, Sharat. So now overlaid on that, you can see the new CD road to the south of I-84, outlined in orange, along with new bridges and the new interchange at exit 5. What you can also see is a number of red X's that show where roadway would be eliminated under this concept. So the existing roadway there at exit 5 would be replaced by the new exit shown in that orange C. Go to the next layer. So this black line shows the limit of proposed work under this concept, and be sort of the edges of the construction. And then the next layer shows yellow and pink shading. They denote yellow being residential areas and pink being commercial land areas where full property takes would be necessary to build the project. So anywhere where there's a property, this would run through it and it would need a full take. The next layer will show us the red circles, which are streets which under this concept would become dead ends as a result of the construction, where they are currently flow-through streets. And then finally, one more layer, I think, is the blue, which denotes areas that are designated as environmental justice communities. And note that most of the dead-end streets, I think 6 out of the 8 of those red circles actually occur within EJ communities. And what this does, it would take a street today that you could drive through in both directions and get through to the other side, and it would turn them into dead ends. Now that would impact pedestrian, bicycle, vehicular connectivity in these areas. which would be one impact. But beyond just the reduction of being able to move, of connectivity in terms of moving through there, it would eliminate these roads as throughways, which can raise safety concerns. I don't know if we have any of our emergency response folks, or maybe some volunteer response folks on the call. Fire truck access, ambulance, police response vehicles. Creating these dead ends would eliminate two-way ingress and egress, and in some cases could present challenges in terms of turning radius. If you can imagine a large fire truck, when we build cul-de-sacs today, they have big, round, turning areas at the end. And the reason that is, if you grew up in the 70s, you'll remember that dead ends literally just dead ended. When we can design a cul-de-sac, when we're looking at a brand new development, we have to design them with the ability for a fire truck to be able to turn around. Where we're dead ending roads that have properties on either side, that may not be possible, in addition to then having only one way in and one way out. So that's one of the main impacts of this concept. The other thing, Shra, if you can just sort of circle around the Star Avenue new interchange area, it is, you can see it's outside of that blue environmental justice community area. This entire neighborhood would be impacted under this concept. So all of the yellow and red shading would be land area that would need to be taken. And I think if we go to the next slide, we can really see that in much greater detail. So this is sort of a blow up of a Star Avenue area. And then there are a number of photos, and the photos have little dotted lines that go to the actual properties that they are depicting. And these are all within shaded areas with full takings. And I think you can get a pretty clear picture pretty quickly that this is a really established neighborhood. The nature is definitely suburban. This is a little farther away from the highway, and each of these shaded areas would be taken. It would also really heavily and irreparably impact this neighborhood, would take it from what it is today into primarily the off-ramp and some grassed areas at the expense of all of the current dwellings that we see here, as well as others that are not shown here. I think that was all I wanted to say about this slide. So what are the advantages or pros of this concept? It would improve connection to Danbury Hospital and downtown area. It would provide access from North Street. There's nothing particularly unusual about the construction methods that would be needed. And with every, actually, this is a really important part, with every concept, we are looking at opportunities to enhance bicycle and pedestrian use. So wherever we're touching an area, that's going to come into play. How can we improve this for non-vehicular use as well as cars and buses and trucks coming on and off of the highway? Some of the cons, it wouldn't reduce congestion and highway mobility. It would cause some congestion and delay on the CD road. There's some fairly steep grades on Main Street at Star Ave. We need to address that. Would create some wider intersections. But really, the headline here and the most significant piece of this is that this concept would result in substantial impacts, both to community cohesion and to neighborhoods, and most notably the Star Avenue neighborhood that we were just looking at in the last slide. So it's pretty significant. The $1 sign, it looks like it's nothing when we talk in billions. But the cost of this concept, as you can imagine, this is just a portion of the full study area corridor that we're looking at. It falls on the lowest end of our dollar sign rating. If you're looking at this sort of as a Yelp dollar sign, it's less than $500 million in terms of construction costs. That's all I want to say about that. So in summary, this concept is likely to result in impacts that would be difficult to mitigate, most specifically the impacts to neighborhoods and community continuity where dead-end roads would be dead-ended. In order to move forward with this concept, we would need to demonstrate that the potential benefits would outweigh the impacts. And this is true with many of the other ones that we look at. And keep that in mind when Rick speaks later about sort of the various levels of screening analysis. I think that is the last slide for concept 24. And at that point, I'll open it to questions.
So back to me, I just want to chime in really quickly. If you're new to the PAC and you're not familiar with the term environmental justice or EJ, this is a term that represents certain populations that are typically underrepresented in our public process. So we just are doing a little bit extra to make sure that their voices are heard. A lot of times this is, lower income, minority, people with limited English proficiency. But it can also include students and seniors and stuff like that. So when Janine talks about these groups, it's really important, especially for, any sort of, federal buy-in, that we're looking at these and we're making sure that we're reaching out to them. So with that,
really good point, Marcy.
That's the only thing I wanted to say, but
no, I'm happy you brought that up. And the only other thing I will say about that is we are held to a standard that we cannot, regardless of what project we do, we can't disproportionately impact environmental justice communities.
Right. So, and some of these, these dead ends, they're bigger in this. So I guess, if anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to raise your hand, just chime in. We're very casual here. And if not, you can hold. Oh, I have a question. Barry.
Have you reached out at all to any of the potentially impacted homes, or have you/we not even gotten to that stage? Like, in other words, have you any indication of how hard it would be to take those properties?
It's a really good question. The answer is we have absolutely not. And this is why we are very early in our screening process. So we would want to get to the point where we knew that a concept was going to move forward or had a high probability of going forward and then being developed. We are not there yet. So we have not, and it wouldn't be appropriate to, in many cases, unduly alarm people for something that may never happen. When we get to the point where we have a grouping of concepts that look like they're going to move forward, then we start really digging in and looking at the impacts, the next layer and the next layer. And then at some point it is appropriate to reach out to individual property owners, but that is not where we're at yet. Good question though.
Chris.
Hi, thanks for calling on me. I like the presentation. I appreciate it. I just wanted to throw something out there that I wanted everyone to keep in mind regarding the timeline of the project, and also in relation to the existing pavement that's already there. So like, one of my biggest concerns is like, what's going to happen over time? Like, we have some of these newer projects that are starting to come in that we're talking about that maybe could start before the larger projects later on. But is there any focus on making sure that that gets done before the existing pavement gets really messed up? Because there's already some writing on the wall as to the pavement in areas that, are starting to really deteriorate and also starting to get into rough shape, especially through Danbury. So are we focusing on that, also making sure that we don't let the existing pavement, completely go bad while we're starting this new construction project? Because, that would be really bad.
Yeah, maybe I'll just jump in. So we have an independent pavement program through our Office of Maintenance that is ongoing, and that's independent of any project. That they have their seasonal timeframes and when they be paving and keeping up with the pavement. So that's an ongoing thing.
So you're saying that there won't be any effect on that? Because my concern would be like, they're not going to pave like 6 months before we start the construction project, because then you're just going to be ripping up brand new pavement, right? Like, that's my concern. It's like because eventually when we get to this point where the pavement may be done in another 7 years, maybe 6 years, 5 years, maybe at the earliest for Danbury, because it just got repaved. That is starting to get into the period of time of where we may start some of these smaller construction projects. And so that was just my question. Are we going to at least like then make sure that we bump up the schedule a little bit and pave it in like 2 years to maybe compensate for the fact that towards the end of the life of that, we're going to be starting a project and going to be tearing up certain things? Like, that was just my question. Is there like a focus on the projects, or is there communication between that existing pavement project or repaving project and this construction project?
Yeah, and maintenance, we work closely with maintenance every year on the paving program. They give us a look ahead and they check with all the active projects. So it's always coordinated. So yeah, that'll all be coordinated as things move forward.
Cool. Okay, thank you. That was my only question.
Thanks, Chris. All right, Tom Aldermatt, I see that you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to add the comment. You know, I work for the city of Danbury as the engineer. I just wanted to point out, we did have a technical meeting 2 weeks ago, and, you know, there were substantial issues with this concept 24, you know, from the city's point of view. So there's a lot of work to be done. I didn't want anybody to think that this was something the city supports directly. There's a lot of work, you know, that we need to, a lot of issues we need to address. Thank you.
Right. And, you know, a lot of these concepts that we're putting forward aren't perfect, and we know that, but we're just bringing them out for discussion, and some of them will fall off the table. You know, we hope. Out of the 20 or so that we bring to you, we're hoping that, you know, we can dwindle that down a little bit. Any other questions, comments? We have a couple more, you know, another concept to present that we'd like to move forward with. And we can always go back to this.
Okay, let me just move the slide, which is frozen, I think. All right, great. Hello, everyone. This is Sharat. Just welcoming everyone back to the PAC meeting number 8. So I'm going to present two concepts. The first one being what's called the TISMO option. It's essentially an abbreviation that Federal Highway has for strategies that can be done on a very short time frame. The last PAC meeting, we heard a couple of you talking about low-hanging fruit and seeing what we can do right away, not wait for the big project to come across. So TISMO is essentially a strategy or a set of strategies that can be applied for projects that can be done on a short term. So what is TISMO? So there's a long definition for TISMO from the Federal Highway side. It's a Federal Highway Initiative, but these are a set of strategies which preserve a lot of the existing infrastructure. It doesn't require any widening. All the work is done within the existing right-of-way that the department owns, and also would incorporate any planned infrastructure. So it's really not just cars. It would incorporate all the modes. So it could be pedestrian, bicycle, bus, and rail. And I know some of you attended our PAC meeting where we talked about Concept 4, which is a non-highway option, and that did incorporate some of the bus and rail recommendations. So why do TISMO? So the important part of the TISMO is it can be done in a very short time frame. We're talking about like a 5 to 10 year time frame, maybe. It just requires limited funds, so it's not a big mega construction project. It's a very limited project with limited funds. And a lot of the TISMO options could use technology. So technology, as many of you know, is getting better and better every day. And technology allows things to be done in the TISMO option. So for the I-84 corridor, we looked at several of these strategies. There are almost 100 strategies in the TISMO handbook, and we kind of went through them and screened them and saw which ones apply. So some of these we're going to talk about, especially we're going to talk about the dynamic lane use in more detail today. We did look at the temporary or hard shoulder running, which is the next one down. It didn't work, and this is some of the things you may have seen where you talk about the bus and shoulder or cars on shoulder. I think Massachusetts runs this, where cars during the peak hour run traffic on the shoulder. They run traffic on the peak hours on the shoulder. In this corridor, it doesn't work really well because the exits are too closely spaced. So we tried to look at this from an engineering standpoint. It didn't work too well. The freeway ramp metering is a strategy which is used at the ramps, and you might have seen mostly in the Midwest and South. I'm not sure how many of the states here use freeway ramp metering. Connecticut at one point had freeway ramp metering in Middletown, which got removed. It's essentially a signal that is provided at the ramp entrance, and traffic has to wait until the signal turns green. We looked at some of these strategies, some of these freeway ramp metering strategies at ramps along I-84 and Route 7. It didn't really work because it was creating a lot of congestion. Some of these ramps are really high volume ramps, and there was a lot of congestion being created on the side streets, and which didn't really do too well for the side streets, and all the side streets were getting jammed. So freeway ramp metering, based on our evaluation, doesn't work well for this corridor. There are the next 6 strategies, which include traffic incident management, which is essentially the installation of cameras and signs. You may have seen signs on the highway sometimes saying next exit, 10 miles, 15 minutes or something like that. So information for drivers, that is something the department is currently engaging a big project to install some new cameras and signs along I-84 in the Danbury section. The arterial and the corridor management strategies are related to looking at this local street network and looking at especially the ramps and trying to retime the traffic lights and especially trying to move traffic on those local streets. And we're working closely with the city on some of those improvements. We did talk about the public transportation and travel demand management as part of our Concept 4 strategy, which was trying to provide better bus routes and rail connection. So that is something that could be implemented in a very short time frame. And the last one is the connected and automated vehicle deployment. That this is what's called driverless cars. This is the new technology that's out there. Connecticut is testing this right now. It's not in fruition right now. Has to go to the state legislature, and they're testing the use of that technology here. But hopefully, this will be something that can be applied in a short term. So we're going to talk about dynamic lane use a little bit, and I'll get into the little bit details of what we are looking at here. What is dynamic lane use? So dynamic lane use is a strategy which opens or closes a travel lane based on the time of day. So essentially, there would be a travel lane that would be open or closed depending on the time of day. And you may have seen some of these applications. If you've traveled to the Tappan Zee Bridge, they have like a barrier that moves around during the time of day and shifts traffic around. This is not exactly that, but something similar to that, where the dynamic, here we are applying dynamic lane use in the median. And the median, I'm assuming everyone can see my mouse here, but the median area is the area around the left side of the travel lanes. What we are proposing here is to widen that median area out to provide enough shoulder, adequate shoulder, and use that shoulder to be used for travel depending on the time of day. So in the morning, for example, like this graphic shows, going towards New York where the volume is heavier, we would open that lane on the left side and traffic could now use the 4 lanes. This would essentially be the shoulder. And this is kind of done in many parts. People have used it in Massachusetts and other places where the shoulder is available for traffic to traverse on. And this will be indicated by that green arrow that says it's open. In the other direction in the morning, which we don't need the 4th lane on, that lane would be closed. And the arrow essentially would indicate on the top, the X in the top would indicate that the lane is closed for traffic. So in the middle of the day, when there's traffic demand is not that high, both the lanes would be closed. This would be essentially both these lanes, just to kind of give you a sense of it, would be about 12-foot wide with some sort of shoulder. We are still working on the feasibility of the amount of shoulder that we can provide there, but certainly there would be some shoulder available on the left side of that dynamic lane to allow for people so that they're not too close to the median. This could provide some kind of a buffer use. In the evening, though, coming from New York and going towards Waterbury and Hartford, that dynamic lane would be open, and this essentially would provide that 4th lane. So we always had the concerns about the congestion and the peak commuting periods, and this 4th lane now is available in those peak periods and would help us support that travel during that period to avoid any kind of congestion that we see from the 3 lanes. Just to keep in mind, a lot of these different combinations of dynamic lane use we are evaluating still, and we are looking at the feasibility of how this will work in terms of implementing it. So where would this be implemented? The limits of this implementation would be between the 2 7 interchanges, would be between interchanges 3 and 7, kind of denoted in this light blue area. We are looking at exactly where we would start the implementation of this option. It may not be exactly where 7 comes in. We may have to do it before 7 comes in on the west and 7 comes in on the east. So that's something we're working on. But just to give you a sense, it's not entirely going into New York or going past Danbury to the east. It will be implemented within the 2 7 interchanges. This is just an aerial rendering of how it would be. There would be a gantry on the top, a lane use sign that's that indicates which lane is open. In the opposite direction, for if this is westbound, in the opposite direction, the eastbound, this sign would say X on top. So you can't use the shoulder. So here, this would be used. This shoulder would be available for people to drive on, related to if they're headed towards New York. One of the things we got to keep in mind, and I think we talked quite frequently about the 7 interchanges, all the exits to the 7 interchanges are to the left. So we got to keep in mind that the traffic that's on the shoulder is oriented towards the 7 South or 7 North areas. The issue is we want to make sure they're not forced to move 2 or 3 lanes to go to the right to stay on 84. So certainly putting this highway signage up is going to be very key for us to essentially make sure traffic is staying on the correct lane as they are driving through this corridor. Some example projects in the US. So we did some research and looked at other projects that are happening in the US. There are a few popping up in Michigan. Wisconsin is also constructing a project on Route 12 called the US 12 Beltline. Pennsylvania is also currently doing a project, but here is kind of a similar use where in Michigan they are using the shoulder with the arrow pointed down to be open in that time period that they need it and closed when they don't need it. So essentially this is going to be similar to what you will see if this project moves forward with the TISMO related to the lane use. So certainly there'll be more signage and information available. So what's the benefit of this concept? So during the peak hour, we get that 4th lane. The delay is reduced in the 4th lane. We can implement this in a short time frame because we are mostly keeping this improvement within the existing right-of-way. We are going to also be constructing this using typical methods. There's no special construction required because we are still limiting the construction to be within the existing right-of-way, and we could provide adequate room on either side for traffic to traverse through this section. The cons is, as many of you probably have not seen this in Connecticut, it's a new thing in Connecticut. So driver familiarity and confusion. So kind of using and following signs and making sure the proper directionality is given to drivers to get to where they need to get to. The other con, which is important, is the left shoulder now, which many travelers today use for any kind of breakdown areas cannot be used anymore. So if the lane is in use, left shoulder cannot be used as a breakdown area. So there's no limited. That shoulder that I showed you on the left side is going to be very small. It would not be adequate to be used as a breakdown area. A few other things, obviously we're not going to be improving lane continuity because this 4 lanes are only going to be limited within the 3 to 7 corridor. We are not going to be eliminating the left-hand ramps. Those left-hand ramps will remain, and that's mainly the reason why this is the low-hanging fruit or the short-term improvement that we could implement right away. And the signage I talked about to make sure that we're directing traffic to be on the specific lane they need to be to get to their destinations. We are doing a construction cost estimate, but we definitely know that this is going to be less than $500 million and definitely within the shorter time frame range. So our recommendation is to evaluate this concept much further. In fact, we are doing that now, and we do see there's a benefit here to reducing the congestion, improving mobility, as Janine was talking about the draft purpose. With that, I'll pause for a second and take questions.
All right, I'm looking. I don't see anyone raising their hand yet, but usually we have a slight delay. Does anyone have any questions for Sharat before we move on to the next concept?
It's Matt Kezavecchia from Emergency Services. I just had a question about emergency vehicle access and some of these projects that are ongoing throughout the United States. What is the feedback been as far as utilization of that left lane that typically emergency services do use when there's heavy congestion and there's an emergency in traffic?
So Matt, to answer your question, during the peak hour when that shoulder lane is open, it's going to be difficult unless, certainly there's going to be cameras that'll be monitoring this. There's going to be heavy camera monitoring and signs. And I think a lot of states that are implementing this are putting cameras on the gantry in a frequent interval. So if there's a need for emergency responders to go through, they could shut that lane down. So the actual gantry that has the down arrows for that duration, you could turn that off to an X and prevent any more further traffic to come on that. But unfortunately, that lane is what is going to be used during that peak period. So if it's an off-peak period, obviously like Michigan does it in the example I showed you, If the lane is not in use, that certainly is a usable shoulder. It's going to be a wide shoulder, so that's in the direction that we don't need it. You can certainly use that for emergency response. I think what they're doing is trying to put as many cameras, and you might see here they put a camera on top. I think it's important to get that information out to the emergency responders and also for the traffic to make sure that the lane will be closed because there's an accident or incident out there.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? All right, we can always go back to this. Shrat, you want to move on to 14?
All right, so concept 14, as Janine was introducing it, this is a concept on the east side. We are talking now the 7 South, 7 South and the north going in the New Milford area, and the exit 8 area, which is the Newtown Road exit area. So looking at the toolbox that we used here, it was obviously we were looking here mainly to address the weave condition between 7 and 8, interchanges 7 and 8, and we did that in the eastbound direction by providing a CD road. So we used the CD road as one of the toolboxes, and many of you had mentioned during our prior PAC meetings and also identified that the 7 South movement coming from New Milford and Brookville and going towards 84 headed east towards Hartford is a difficult move to make if you're on that 7 South ramp trying to get to Newtown Road. So that was one of the focus for this concept, is to look at how we can improve that connection from 7 South to interchange 8, which is Newtown Road. Also, we eliminate the eastbound left-hand off-ramp, which goes towards New Milford. So here's a graphic. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Okay, so this is 84 going eastbound towards Hartford. Today, when you're going eastbound, you need to go to Route 7 North. You're on the left side. This is the existing 7 off. In this option, we would switch the ramp to the right side, and this would be the new 7 North movement. That ramp that would now exit at 84 eastbound would become what's called a collector distributor road, and that collector distributor road in the eastbound direction would serve exit 8. So if you are headed towards exit 8, there'd be a sign for traffic to make this exit on the CD road to get to exit 8. This CD road also would now take the 7 South ramp and merge that into that CD road, which will then get rid of the weave today that happens from 7 South to 84 East. So that 7 South traffic now is on the CD road traffic and then can get to Newtown Road over here. We also provide what's called a slip ramp, a ramp that someone can use. So this is mainly for people who are coming 7 South and want to get to 84 East. They would use the slip ramp to get on back to 84. So if you're coming 7 South, you don't have direct connection to 84 eastbound. You would have to use the CD road to get to 84 eastbound. So there's no change in this specific concept. We have a similar concept 15 where there was a CD road in the westbound direction too, but this concept does not have a CD road in the westbound direction. And so this concept keeps the existing condition as is. So there's still going to be that merge and the diverge from Newtown Road and Route 7 on the westbound direction. There's no change there. But the eastbound, we make that big improvement to put that 7 South traffic on the right side and make sure they're not cutting across and going across 3 lanes in 500 feet, which is what happens today.
We should
Going.
back.
Did someone say something?
Everybody got the?
No, I'm sorry. We lost our internet. We just came back. That's all. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. I'm going to move on. So once, in addition to the improvement that's made on 84 and Route 7, we are also looking to improve this whole interchange 8 area, which is what we call as a turtleback, and it looks like a turtleback and has a lot of movements that go around this loop. So there's an idea here. Again, this is one of the ideas how we can improve this specific area. And I'm going to point some arrows. So today, and there's 3 specific movements I'm going to point. So if you're on Newtown Road today and want to get to 84 westbound, you have to traverse Newtown Road, go eastbound on Route 6, turn around, and then almost go through this westbound section and go back onto 84 westbound. What we are proposing here is instead of that movement would now happen just more direct, not having to go through several traffic lights that they go through now. How we do that, if you're on Newtown Road, there'll be a traffic light here, and you will be put on what I call the wrong side of the traffic. You'll be put on the left-hand side, and then that would allow you to get a direct flow into 84 westbound. This is a new interchange concept. It is kind of becoming very popular now in many parts of the country. In fact, Connecticut is looking to implement one of these in Norwalk. This is called a diverging diamond interchange. And essentially the whole purpose is you're taking those left-hand movements out of that traffic flow and putting them on the left side, and they don't really get any conflicts. They go directly onto, in this case, would directly go on the highway. So this avoids about 600 to 700 cars circulating around through this area and going through several traffic lights trying to get to 84 westbound. The other movement that we are looking to improve is this 84 westbound off-ramp movement that comes on to this Newtown Road. And what we're doing is we're shifting that off-ramp to the west, to this movement, and putting them on this side. What that does, as many of you probably experienced this, is if there's a traffic light today at this point where the ramp comes in and this so-called loop road comes in, and there's a lot of weaving going on. There's a couple of gas stations here. There's a lot of crisscrossing traffic. By putting this on this side, it allows this 84 westbound traffic to stay left and go on to Newtown Road without any problem. They don't have to cut across like today. A lot of that traffic would have to move to the left to get to Newtown Road. Similarly, the traffic that wants to come off this loop area can stay always on the right side and get back on 84 westbound. So that we see as a benefit by just switching those two off-ramp locations. Lastly, what we did in this concept is this eastbound on-ramp that currently is between Old Sherman Turnpike and Payne Road is now shifted to the east of Payne Road, which allows traffic from Payne Road. We notice that there's several cars that get off of Payne Road and try to get back on 84 eastbound. They have to use this kind of loop movement. By shifting this, now they get direct access to 84 eastbound from here. And in addition, this Route 6 westbound traffic, we were able to put them directly on to 84 eastbound. So this Route 6 traffic, not that many people do that, but if they want to get back on 84 eastbound, there's a direct connection now versus trying to go around this whole loop and trying to get back on in the existing on-ramp to 84 eastbound. So there are some benefits of this, certainly by eliminating a lot of circulation around this area. I know in peak periods, this kind of jams up and there's a lot of traffic flows that get impacted. So certainly by switching those ramps and especially shifting this ramp to the left gives us a good improvement in this area. So some of the pros of this concept, we eliminate the left-hand ramps at interchange 7, mainly the Route 7 ramps. We found a delay reduction by doing that, especially by switching all the ramps. And just to keep in mind that this delay is only measured within the limits of the concept. So obviously, as Janine was talking about combining the concepts, we will be combining these in the greater scheme of things as we move forward. We eliminate the big movement of Route 7 traffic in the eastbound direction that doesn't have to weave anymore. This improvement is within existing DOT right-of-way and is constructed with typical methods. The cost estimate again is in the first dollar sign, so pretty inexpensive related to the overall project. So we are recommending this concept be moved forward and be combined and look further to address highway and congestion, highway mobility adjacent to the highway. And mobility adjacent to the highway. So this is a positive concept for us, and we are going to be moving this forward into the next stage. Any questions?
Comments, questions? I know this is a lot and some changes. How do you feel about this? Do you want any clarifications? All right, I don't see any coming in. Feel free to hold questions or we can go back to this later. And I think, Rick, you're up next, right? We have one more little segment of our presentation, so we hope you'll be patient with us.
Thanks, Marcy. Yeah, I'm Rick Black. It's good to meet you all virtually. I am a year into this project. but I'm about 35 years of transportation planning experience. So I'm thrilled to be working with this team. This has been a great project. So in our next steps, we just kind of like to walk you through kind of where we are in screening and what you can expect to see as we continue down into Pack 9 and Pack 10, wherever we end up. And as you are all painfully aware, we've gone through a myriad of concepts already, broken down again into 4 segments. And some of this is redundant, but I think it needs to be set up again for the screening. We've got these 4 segments, east, center, west, and main line. And it would be obviously be really ideal if we came out with one perfect concept from each segment that could be combined into a combination that works. But obviously that's not the case. So we're going to be going through some screening criteria. And we want to develop a screening criterion of fatal flaw analysis that it just doesn't work, and then compare the segments against one another within each concept against one another within each segment. And so we'll be following these concept screenings by segment. And then, so we've looked at developing the screening criterion. We will apply those screening criteria again, first of all, to all of them with a fatal flaw, and then within each segment, each concept against one another, and screen those concept segments. Following that, we will combine the segments into these project concept segments, and then we will screen those again. And once those come out of the screening, we may have all of the combinations, one of the combinations, however many, those will be incorporated into the reasonable range of alternatives into a detailed environmental analysis, where we're now really looking at a much greater, 30–40% design. We're looking at the details much more intently. So in this fatal flaw analysis, the first thing we're going to look at is to make sure they meet project purpose. And like Janine has explained, that's reduction in congestion, increase in mobility through this segment through Danbury. And each segment then will be screened to make sure it's feasible to build. Is there some unique construction methodology or hillside that's going to take a new construction method to build? Do we need blimps to carry cars? Is it feasible to build? Will we worsen the geometry, our sight distances, our curves, our hills? Is the steepness of grade feasible for moving large trucks? Those kinds of things. And then we're going to be looking at the unjustifiable environmental impacts. Does the concept, Janine talked about, does it serve a purpose that is commensurate with the impacts? Is this normal amongst traffic planning projects of this magnitude, of this nature? Or is it unjustifiable? Are we going to completely bisect a community that's currently cohesive? Are we disproportionately affecting an environmentally justice or a sensitive resource? Are we unjustifiably needing to relocate businesses and residences? So once it passes the fatal flaw, next step, Shirat. So here's an example. And remember, these haven't gone through this process yet. This is an example of what we can do. So again, we've got our main line, our west, our center, and our east segments. And in this example, we've got 4 main line concepts. We have 3 west concepts, 5 center, 4 east. So let's just say we go through the fatal flaw analysis and we drop out main 3, west 2, 2 in the center, center 3 and 5, and east 3. The next level of screening is going to be a redundancy analysis. And redundancy is when we have 2 or more concepts that serve similar functions. One of those functions may be served a bit better or worse by one or more of the concepts, or one may have drawbacks to constructability to impacts all of those drawbacks compared to another one. So it goes through redundant, and in this example, let's say we lose our main 2, we lose our center 1 and east 4, and then it's going to go through the high impacts. Let's just say here, now we have, let's just, for example, we've got 2 lane widening projects. One is going to widen to the north, one is going to widen to the south. And they may serve the function. It may decrease congestion, increase mobility to the same degree. It's a beautiful concept, but one of them is going to take out a whole neighborhood or residents and businesses, and the other is on open land. So we are looking at the built and the natural environments when we're looking at environmental impacts. And so in this example, we lose main 4, we lose center 4. Both of the wests continue through and both of the easts continue through. So at that point, we'll kind of take a step back and start combining them again. Shrat? So again, in our example, we've got a mainline 1. We only had 1 concept that made it through, 1 concept in our center segment that made it through, 2 in the west, 2 in the east. So we combine them in every combination that's possible to see if they're feasible to work together. So here you can see the 4 concepts. So then we're going to once again look at feasibility. Let's take for an example, let's say our east 1 widened to the north and our west 1 widened to the south, and they don't line up. As a combination, they wouldn't be feasible. They wouldn't be feasible to build. So there's a lot of constructability and feasibility that goes in there. Then we'll look again at the purpose and need. Which ones of these, comparing one combination to another, which one of these decrease congestion, increase mobility to a greater degree? And again, then we'll run them through a similar redundancy analysis and a high impacts analysis. And we then will come out with a reasonable range of alternatives. All 4 of these might make it through, or only 1 makes it through. And what I want to remind everyone is these will go into the alternative analysis in a more detailed environmental study. But if we have lost a feature of one concept or a concept in its entirety through the screening process, if more information comes up, if we get more information on why a segment or a piece of a concept, an issue in a concept, or a whole concept is still feasible, during this detailed environmental study, we have an ability to bring it back up so it isn't completely dead once we get into the detailed environmental study. We have an opportunity to look at in greater detail with greater engineering specificity to make sure that we are covering all the potential alternatives for solving these problems. So in well, it's longer than Marcy's 30-second introduction slide, but in a 5-minute blast through, we've gone through the screening process kind of quickly. So if we have any questions, I'll be happy to talk about the screening process.
I'd like to ask for one clarification, and Shrat, maybe you can go back 1 slide. And
Sure.
I just want to make sure our PAC understands. So up until now, we've been talking about concepts, and, we're about concept 1 through 14. And, this is what you see on the website. We have some that are mainline, some that are, interchange, some that are off highway, and they have a number. Right now, we're about 1 through 14. These numbers that you see here are example numbers, correct, Rick? Like
Yes,
these
ma'am.
some of those might turn into like mainline 1, but I just want people to not confuse what they see on the website with these example numbers. This is just a way to sort it. We know we have to fix the western portion of the corridor. We know we want to fix the center stuff, and we know we want to fix the eastern stuff. And we're going to combine them. But what you see on the website, those numbers aren't interchangeable with this.
Yeah, they are not interchangeable. Correct. These are the examples.
Exactly.
And M1 might be our concept 12, for instance.
Exactly.
So Sharat, will you go back to the very first next step slide? that last funnel that we were looking at is go all the way back to the very first of mine, the next steps. Is this second to last arrow, the segment combination screening. So we've taken all at, when we are at that funnel, we have looked at all of our 1 through 27 concepts. They've been screened for fatal flaw analysis. They've been screened against each other in segments. And some of them have been screened out. Some segments might have all of the concepts still make it through. They've been then combined into every possible combination mathematically that's possible. And in that second to last arrow here is that funnel where we are now going to look at the feasibility and compare these combinations of segments against one another. So I hope that cleared up. Thanks, Marcy, for that.
All right, PAC members, we're just about done, but does anyone have any questions for Rick before we, I think we have Andy wrapping up shortly, but if anyone has any questions, comments on the screening process. All
We've
right.
stunned them into
Confused.
silence, Marcy.
They're either totally confused or it was well.
All right. Well, you know what? If you have any follow-up questions, you can always email Sharat or myself, and we'll get you to who you need to talk to.
Okay, Andy.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. And special thanks to the newest member of our project team, Krishaline, for jumping right into our first PAC meeting. Thanks for that. Yeah, so our schedule really hasn't changed. We haven't changed this. We're wrapping up the developing concept phase, and as you heard, starting to get into the screening so that we can get to our reasonable range of alternatives, which will really get us to kind of the end of the study, and then be able to make recommendations and initiating projects that will move into that environmental study phase, those blue boxes. So we're getting closer there. I do want to mention that I think the analysis and engineering and screening parts of the study are still on track to be done by the end of 2022. But we will be writing a detailed report. We'll be sending that out for review. We'll be going over it with you, as well as there'll be a public meeting. I think some of those activities could extend into 2023. So that's just kind of an FYI there for the overall schedule. Next slide, Shrap. So our next steps. The concept development phase is winding down. We should have hopefully all of the concepts on the website shortly. We still are wrapping up the analysis of some of the newer concepts, but we're almost there. And then we're going to start switching gears, and Rick gave you a little taste of it today, and the screening is really going to be the focus of the next PAC meeting. And then we're going to get into combining the concepts. After we've screened out what we can, then we're going to combine them and turn them into these alternatives, which is ultimately going to get us to that range of alternatives. So that's kind of our next milestone, I'll call it, and we're getting there. And so like I said, the next PAC meeting is really going to focus on screening, and that next PAC meeting is June 22nd. So hope to see everybody there then. Let's open it up for questions one more time.
Right, and I guess, I would like to also just encourage you all to go to the website. We have 4 new concepts that have been posted there in the past few weeks. I expect we'll have another 2, including what we're discussing, some of the stuff we're discussing today, in the next several weeks. So, we are doing our best to update it pretty quickly so that, you have good stuff. We're going to be doing a lot of pop-ups this summer, some really cool events. And, we're going to go out to the public with all of this information and, just have some really good conversations. Other comments, questions, anything? I know we've been talking for a while, for an hour and 10 minutes. So, anything you have for us?
And Sharat, maybe you can just switch to the next slide just for the email info. Yep, if you guys have any questions or emails. And also if you want us to talk about any other concepts at the next PAC meeting that you might be interested in. Again, just a reminder, we're not going over all of them. We're going over kind of what we're calling kind of critical, interesting ones, but they'll all be on the website, and we're happy to discuss them all, any of them at a future PAC meeting if anybody wants to.
James Root, newsletter topics. That's kind of usually in my court, so I'll take that. So James Root asked if there's going to be a discussion of newsletter topics. Maybe you and I can, feel free to throw your ideas out. We're starting to think about some of our next newsletter topics. We always, to give you a heads up how we typically do newsletters, we like to have one technical piece, usually on a concept or something else that's major. We also like to have one local piece. And, I'm thinking that maybe this summer we're doing some pretty cool stuff with the Ecuadorian Civic Center and some of their soccer games. So that might be our local piece, but we're always open to ideas. So if there's something that you want us to cover, either reach out to me directly, Sharat, Andy, Oh, in the last newsletter. Do you want to unmute or do you want to talk offline? Okay, well, maybe I'm not sure what's going on with the mute, but I'll James, I'll reach out to you offline about the last newsletter. And we have another one that, just came out. And I see more chats coming in from Barry. And ideas that you like. Oh, so James is having issues with this phone. So I'll reach out to you offline and we can talk about the newsletter. And Barry mentioned that he loves the idea of a connector from exit 3 to exit 8 for cars that go locally. The locals are significant percentage of traffic. Redoing the exit ramps around 5 and taking properties, that's tough is what he's saying. Other exit ramp options shown seem logical. And, we'll copy all of these and we'll put these in the meeting notes so everyone can see them and we'll post them online. Other comments or questions? All right, well, it looks like we made it in an hour and 15 minutes. So you now all have 15 minutes back in your day. We appreciate your time, and at some point soon we'll meet in person and maybe we'll even have lunch together.
Yep, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you, everybody.
It was good meeting
you all.
everybody. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.